we have to create something, a better way to learn, to experiment from those behaviors from the AI. Because ethic, the compliance sometimes, it's gray area. You have to make sure you have a good decision making to decide whether this is unethical, behavior, or this is just strategic move. Because that line is really blurred. It's just like in between the two sides of that spectrum. I think that's really the blind spot we're missing.
Today's episode is with Zichuan Xiong, who is Global Head of AIOps at Thoughtworks. Thoughtworks is a global technology consultancy with over 10,000 employees across 30 countries, and they've been in business for over 30 years. He has a ton of really interesting insight into what it takes to use AI internally within Thoughtworks to grow their margin, but also what's going on with all of their customers and how it's being deployed across a number of enterprises. Really fascinating conversation, both a deep thinker and a very practical one in terms of producing, deploying on the ground, getting his hands into use cases. There's some great insight into how you should think about evaluating AI use cases, some ways that you can prioritize that, different ways that you can stand out as a vendor if you're trying to get into this space. He had points of view on DeepSeek, on what our relationship with AI should be, on what it means for consultancies, and really what open source should be all about in this space as well. So really great episode. Let me know what you think. Hey, thanks for listening. Today I'm here with Zichuan Xiong, who is Global Head of AI Ops at Thoughtworks. Zichuan, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ben, for inviting me. So this is great.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation. Just for a tiny bit of background, can you give just people a brief intro to Thoughtworks and yourself?
Sure. My name is Zichuan. So I joined Thoughtworks about 18 years back. I joined as a graduate. So Thoughtworks, Thoughtworks is a global tech consultancy company. We focus on software for almost over 30 years. We have a technical brand, super premium technical brand. We're part of a lot of the technical movement, starting from agile, extreme programming, DDD, data mesh. There's just different generation of how technology evolves. There is a Thoughtworks behind the scene. Also, we are a huge open source contributor. Yeah, so based in San Francisco, I'm heading the AI Ops at Thoughtworks. So basically my role is because we have a managed service as a business. So it's contributing probably the 25% of the business, the revenue to Thoughtworks globally. So my job is try to use AI to drive the margin, increase the margin of our managed services, and try to do more with less, do better. So that's really perfect and fit for me to take that role, and because I had the passion in AI for a long time. So yeah, so this me.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think, 18 years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of change at Thoughtworks. I'd love to get into, so as AI Ops specifically, you mentioned you're trying to increase margin for kind of your managed services. So are you focused much more on kind of Thoughtworks' own process and kind of back office efficiency, not so much on customers and their deployments? Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit both. So I actually provide the AI advisory work for any enterprise and trying to transform their IT operations by using AI. So that's just also part of the business, right? But managed service is more about using AI, focusing our internal end-to-end process, focused on value chain, end-to-end value chain, and identify those opportunities in probably over 30 different use cases, and try to work with different ecosystem partners to drive the savings. Because managed service is all about savings. So every year you have to promise a year-on-year saving to your customers. So I would say a little bit both, some internal stuff and also external work as well.
Okay. Great. And Ken, you've been there for a while, so you've probably seen this shift from, everyone talking about digital transformation to now everyone is talking about AI. Data was very big, I feel like a decade ago. It's like we always go through these shifts in how we talk about it, but I feel like a lot of the work remains the same.
Yeah.
How has your work in that field, and particularly with the C-suite, in these companies, evolved over time?
So I've been part of the multiple different waves when we talk about digital transformation. So I started building the practice about at least over 15 years back when mobile technology was there. So at the moment, everyone was talking about using mobile devices or application to transform how a brand engaging with the customers, leveraging more mobile technology into their enterprise operations, right? So I was driving that. Then after that, cloud computing was a huge deal. The digital transformation is all about moving everything to the cloud, right? Then after that, we talk about the data modernization. So moving things, not only about application, moving digital asset to the cloud, but also the data. Right? So I was part of that journey as well, like transforming the data infrastructure, how the companies consume data was one of the topic I was driving, right? Then we were, starting from 3 years back, AI was huge deal because of the breakthrough of large language model, everything. I think the essentials will be the very similar thing, like change management, managing the stakeholder, the expectations. You have to go to the value chain first and try to think about the different opportunities. And also partially it's really about redesign your entire value chain to think about, you don't use a new technology to follow the past processes in the value chain, right? So there always be a change management, an org structure design part of that. So I think the essentials will be very, very similar. It just maybe the challenges are a little bit different. We still have a lot of questions we don't have answers, like ethical, the AI ethics, regulation, safety. How do we deal with the hallucination? Is this time I think is a little bit different because it is way more dynamics, and also the pace of innovation is way more faster than the last like 2 decades. So that's really different I see, right? We cannot answer all the questions for sure. And also the pace of innovation, competition is way faster than before.
Yeah, and how do you deal with that both, I guess, internally and with your customers, right? Because LLMs in particular are stochastic, right? As you said, they're dynamic. They hallucinate. There's a lot of issues there. And we all know the pace is kind of mind-boggling right now, just what we're seeing going on in the market. So what you're describing feels like it's somewhat different than some of the past waves that you've experienced. How is it different, and how are you seeing that play out internally and externally?
So internally right now, my job is try to think about what's the best way to integrate those AI capability at every step of the value chain. Right. So 80% of the use case is really coming from the value chain itself, and let's just to go to the detailed use cases and try at the feature level to see how it goes, how we can use it. Because you don't, sometimes like my thinking is do not like plan something too big and try to focus on use case, try some like smaller things. And also when you have the smaller thing, you have a smaller scope to manage, right? You have smaller risk, you can manage that. And then you want to collect all the benefit together to tell a bigger story to the customers, to our client, and also internally. So that's really the internal way I try to do more. We try to do more like a bottom-up approach. I try to deploy new tools, even small things, right, at the feature level. But from client perspective, sometimes you want to go like top-down approach. You want to articulate the AI saving at the business model, because sometimes a client they do not really care about how you make it happen. They care about you make it happen, right? You deliver something. So articulating the business value, calculating the saving is super important. And also manage the risks. You always need to have a good answer. Probably you do not have the 100% correct answer to those AI ethic questions, a security question, compliance question, but give the genuine answer to that. To meet that, the industry is not super ready, but we're working hard to make it ready, right? So that's really top-down, approach we're trying to take and focus on the stakeholder communication in terms of value articulation, saving calculation. But from the internal side, let's try to be practical. Let's just focus on smaller things. We're not talking about changing everything, disrupting the business. No, let's do smaller things, put them together step by step to make it happen. So you always see there's two types of narratives when we were talking about the AI changes, the transformation. There's a bigger story to tell, but there's smaller stories to tell as well.
And on that smaller story side, so the use cases specifically, are there some that you're seeing deliver a lot of value that are underestimated sometimes? And are there others where they are overhyped and maybe under-deliver?
So in our case, we just deliver a use case. Yeah, that's a really interesting story. So this is for a government. It's government work, right? So this is because in our industry, we're talking about L1, L2, L3 support. So each level, you have a certain level of complexity of the ticket. Then you give to different teams to resolve that, right? L1 will be simple ticket, right? Problem. Then go to L2. If cannot resolve the L1 ticket, you just escalate to L2, who has more knowledge, who has more experience to triage, to resolve the ticket. If they cannot solve the problem, like level up to go to the L3 to do the troubleshooting, right? We actually had a business model like taking care because we have more like premium price. So usually the client will give us the L2, L3 work. Find another price that will be lower, give them the L1 ticket. We actually find that because the handover is tricky, because a lot of time you have the handover, we have to do the triage, right? So the real assumption there is if we can have a better L1 ticket, L2 ticket to deal with, that will increase our, the margin. Because we sometimes like just maybe this a simple question, simple user request, it doesn't work to go to L2. So we actually implement a pre-L1 solution out there by using large language model to triage whether this is good for L1 ticket generation, L2 ticket generation, or AI can resolve that ticket by itself, right? And the result actually remove that whole the L1 ticket team. So to us is great because we have better quality of the L2 ticket to deal with. For the client, it's saving money, right? So that's really the one interesting use case we see. And we definitely want to scale that because the industry should rethink about L1, the level 1 ticket. Sometimes L1 ticket just very simple. You do not need a human to touch on L1 at least, right? You have to rethink about the structure L1, L2, L3. So I think using AI to cut the waste, in terms of the L1 ticket triaging is definitely something we see a great value out there, right? There is a tangible business case. In terms of the hype, I wouldn't call it this is more like a hype. I see there is a gap. If people have the higher expectation, but the result is not that good, meaning that expectation is hard, which is knowledge retrieval is something everyone is talking, building a chatbot. I just see so many chatbots. So companies are building like 12, at least one company I know they're building like over like 20 different chatbots to triage, to offer to the employees to, retrieve some knowledge, whatever, right? So I think that area, you see a lot of like over investment. People are, because I think that should be at the infrastructure level. You should go to company like a Glean, those company to deal with that. Because I don't think that's something that shouldn't be an application level of the investment. So I would say that's a kind of a hype because I just see so many chatbots out there. I think the company shouldn't invest too many chatbots. It's really hard to manage. So
that's like you see a lot of companies that are trying to build retrieval augmented generation solutions, that are doing too much of that work themselves. And like you said, at the application serving different stakeholders versus investing in like foundational layer of kind of like knowledge.
Part of your foundation layer. Okay. That should be your foundation level of the the capabilities. I think that makes sense is because those capabilities are becoming commodity much quicker than we expected, right? Everything we're talking about, prompt engineering, if you look at the new reasoning models, like you don't really do a lot of like prompt engineering. So I don't blame those people like making that decision, the leader making the decision. It's because the pace of innovation is just like, I would say like way faster than we saw in the past. It just
Yeah.
every quarter there is a new thing.
Yeah. You touched on a couple things there that have come to a head quite dramatically recently, right? Like the idea of LLMs becoming a commodity. I know you said you worked in open source as well, new reasoning models. Obviously, DeepSeek has had a pretty big impact on the market. How are you having that? Are you using it internally? Are you having conversations with customers that are pushing for the adoption of it, given the cost considerations? What has been the impact so far on your work?
So we tried a model. We tried a model, I think, 2 weeks ago. I still remember in the afternoon, the Friday, I was trying the model before the Chinese New Year's. It just had the model, they had the application. I tried it. I loved it, especially in the context of the troubleshooting, because we have a lot of troubleshooting case, right? So, for example, troubleshooting for any network issues, you have to go to multiple different sources, knowledge bases to it's a very high, like a cognitive low task, right? We tried a model. There's very interesting. So I was a big fan. I am the big fan of the agentic flow, the multi-agent type of. We were innovating multi-agent about 24 months ago, like 2 years. The mixture of expert type of architecture, it's quite making sense, right? So you have multiple different agents, they have very interesting like reasoning techniques, right? For example, like I love those perspective shifting. So they ask a lot of questions, but did they use like the word like it's like mumbling to yourself, talk to yourself. It's really like a human, like consultant like me. I love like talk to myself because every time you process things, you ask a question, you ask yourself a question, it change perspective. It's great, and also I really love there's a wording mechanism they're putting to the model. They call it epiphany moment, aha moment. It's like completing a puzzle. It's like when you put the missing puzzle in there, your brain is like creating something to you to reward that behavior. And that is really interesting. So I think we're step forward to the next level of the AGI. So that's really interesting, fascinating model for us. Of course, there is a regulation, the security, everything, but it is open source, and we definitely want to try it. Right, so try it at the production level. So and also compare. I love the competition. I guess you see. The OpenAI is catching up. Like everyone's right now is in the last 2 weeks, there are two reasoning models out there. Like Gemini is providing the Flash 2. It's good, very good, right? I see the competition. Once you have the competition, the price of the model will go down. The adoption will go up, which is a great thing for us. So yeah, that's what I love about the DeepSeek.
Yeah, and on the open source side, do you think it puts pressure on the other foundation models to open source? Because I think one of the big things you're seeing is that adoption curve, right? And like everyone is clamoring, if it's a race to the bottom on price, it's also a race to eat up market share in terms of consumption, right? So do you have any thoughts on that?
So my point of view on this is the open source improvement, all the big breakthroughs from the open source market and the community will be pushing those closed source company to be a more like domain specific model. They will go to one domain. I still see there's a gap, right? In multiple domain, like energy companies. I work with a lot of energy company. They're trying to use large language model to try to analyze any geographic knowledge or information. The generic data trained large model cannot process the geo data. So I see a big opportunity for those closed source companies to transform the business model, to retrain, to partner with some industry leaders, to focus on the industry's focus, domain focused large language model. Let all the generic knowledge models, based model, let those open source companies to deal with the generic model. So those are my take, because they're gonna need to do some transformation. I have a lot of model company friends. It just their days is not super good.
Yeah.
They need to do some transformation to work with some of the industry leaders. Because DeepSeek is great, like because the distillation is great. Like why not like using distillation and focusing on use a modern model or teacher model to train the student model, and I focus on one particular area. I think they need to change their business models. Otherwise, this market is hard. You're going to only have a one or two great model. That's it. Maybe three. Like China got one, US got one, Europe got one. And they're competing, which is good.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's possible for a company like OpenAI and Anthropic that have raised billions in capital and have, are chasing hundreds of billions of valuations to go the more domain specific route? Does that not restrict their total addressable market to some extent?
Yeah, I think so. I think I cannot comment on OpenAI. I think they're still the leaders. It's hard for me to comment on their strategy. But in general, I guess, yes, the closed source company must find a new way of the model as a business, right? So how do you work with those industry leaders to focus on one domain and create those new models into one particular domain? Right? So that's really because OpenAI has the goal to drive the AGI, but I wouldn't comment on OpenAI. I still see them as a leader in this space. More thinking about the second tier of the model companies, they might be they need to focus on the sub market or sub like segmentations at the industry level.
I agree with you. I think at least in terms of a lot of the value being in domain specific applications, right? Because the general models, even the best models, are falling down pretty hard when it comes to domain specific applications.
Yeah.
And so if there's an opportunity for, I think early days, a lot of companies were talking about fine tuning their own models. Then I think that kind of very quickly the limits of that were obvious and it was a huge waste of time and resources. And so now it's become like finding the kind of shortcuts or, I think RAG has become so popular as a way of grounding it in domain specific knowledge. But interesting, I hadn't thought about this idea of maybe foundation model providers, second or third tier model providers specializing in specific industries. Moving a little bit away from the market and more towards what you're seeing, at the use case level at Thoughtworks, when you're thinking about how do we grow, how do we improve margins? How are you evaluating use cases? What are kind of the ways that you prioritize investments in AI?
So again, as I said, like we try to evaluate the end-to-end value chain, right? In our value chain, there is the observability side of thing, there is a ticket handling side of thing, there is the resolution side of thing, automation side of thing, and there is the SDLC side of thing, right? So the first one, you try to like create a different buckets of those use cases. I think the answer will be very different. If you are a client asking myself, then I would say the prioritization will focus on maybe the value and also the readiness. The constraint, you have to always need to consider the AI readiness if you can do this, the use case. That's really my version to the client. If client asking, Zichuan, how do you prioritize AI use cases? I would say always prioritize, focus on value chain, focus on the most important step in your value chain, right? And look at the AI readiness. Think about, do you have the data? Do you have knowledge? Do you have people? Things like that. Also, do you have question, right? Then you also need to think about the adoption side of things. What's this adoption out there, right? And then you make decision, right? You want to focus on the higher adoption, more ready use cases, then focus on those. For Thoughtworks internally, I think right now, my job is really try to use the client as I try to sell this use case. Whatever the client is buying, I'll just prioritize. It's purely demand driven because this wave is not really about prioritization to me. My personal opinion on this. Every single thing you can do it. You can do it. You just need to, because we're talking about 50, 60 different clients. Any small thing is not a small thing. I create one small thing, I can scale it to the 50 of my clients, right? So to me, prioritization is not a big deal. I know we're going to do something in the observability side. We're going to do something into the troubleshooting and also the ticket management side. And also, let's just use the market test the water, right? Go to market faster is number one, right? But if you are a client, I might use it different because it's a little bit different because I own my business. I know if I can get my clients to pay the bill, that's a valid use case. That's it. Just do it, right? Because anything, it's like a shotgun like approach. Like it's anything is good. Just do it. Don't worry too much about the value articulation because because to me, that's really different. Like, because AI is a foundational technology. You're going to empower multiple different things. Don't worry about the priority. Just do it. Because I see a lot of companies talking about use cases for a whole month. It's not right. Yeah. Just do something quick. And then that's it. Just because you also see those great tools out there. You can just quickly build up stuff and try to showcase the value. So that's really don't spend too much time into the strategy side. I don't like that approach. Even though I'm making money from that approach, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
as a consultant, the more complicated the strategy development phase, I can just give to client, I make more money. But personally, I don't like that. If I'm the leaders, like executive leaders, I need execution, scale, and also tangible use case. Don't give me slides. Give me real example,
Yeah. It's move fast and build things. Sounds like what you're advocating in this stage. Yeah. You touched on change management, crucial part of this, right? You also mentioned adoption, right? Readiness. But I think adoption, kind of last mile adoption and change management are things that I hear a lot on this show from CAIOs in terms of the challenges that can get overlooked. What are some of the biggest challenges? Is that where they are for you? Are they somewhere else when it comes to actually deploying this technology?
There are definitely multiple different gaps out there. It's not about closing one or two. It's just multiple. Like, for example, data gap, right? Do you have a data? Do you have the structured data? Can you manage the complexity of building different data pipeline to feed the different AI models, right? The eval gap, do you know what's good, what's not good, right? Is your model drifting or not, right? Can you improve the any rack module you are creating, right? Can you do that? Do you have a way of engaging any third large language model to have a second look to judge, the result? Do you have? Can you involve human into the process? Do you have that, right? So the third gap is really the risk compliance side of things. Do you have the regulation compliance framework ready? Do you have a workflow? Do you have the processes? Can you do experiment, right? Do you have that? Talent gap, right? Because everyone's excited about open source, but do you have the talent to manage the open source? Manage the open source requires higher level of the talent, right? Do you have that? Right? So I think that's not like a one single answer. I'll just multiple, all intertwined together. Sometimes you just need people, the consultant, third party, like the change agent, to help you close that. But my organization is facing the same thing. Right? For example, all the AI application right now we're doing, we're still relying on those manual, AI eval process. Some cases we do not have a scalable approach to do that, right? And every time we create an AI agent, we have to just bootstrap from beginning, like scratch, integrating with multiple different tech stack. So that aspect, I think there are multiple companies try to solve the problem like one by one, but you need to super smart and try to consolidate all the solutions and engage with different partners to close those gaps. And also you're going to have a new gaps coming, right? Because model capabilities is going up, they're going to create new gaps. So there's because people are talking about closing a gap. I don't think that's a closing a gap thing. It's always there. You just need to manage that. It's like AGI is not end state. Because the bar is there's a Greek philosophy talk about the ship, the Theseus, right?
Can you tell just for our listeners, like tell that story or what the analogy is?
Yeah, so this is talking about a ship. How much, if you just remove the wood plank, like any components of the ship, when can you call it a ship? AI is the same thing. It's a spectrum. It's evolving. It's very dynamic. So you cannot like tell what AGI is about. There is no accurate like 100% like absolute definition to AGI as well. You have to cope with it. Same thing for the gap. It's dynamic. It's changing all the time because the supply side is also creating the new narrative, the context to the gap we're talking about. So that's really as any like AI leaders, you have to collaborate with the different parties to define what AI is about and try to manage this dynamic gap between the POC to the production. It is always changing. So that's really the challenging part as any of the AI leaders, because this market is moving too fast. We don't know what's there. You always need to like be humble to explore with some like can-do experience. You have to try by yourself and also learn from it. Right? So that's also the very interesting and exciting part of my job, which is exploration.
Yeah. I think we already lack a good definition of intelligence, let alone artificial intelligence. And that makes it becomes even more complicated when you have actors in the market that constantly shift the definitions because investment relies on those definitions. It's hard for people to really understand. But, I think you're right. I think that gap will always exist. And there are some very interesting questions in there. When you're thinking about that execution side of things, that agility, right? How are you structuring your AI team at Thoughtworks and why?
So our teams are just a very simple two parts. We have productization, engineering organization. That's it. So engineering organization is trying to focus on building capabilities, building a POC, and building solutions, work with different partners to provide us solution to a problem. The product organization is trying to focus on the use cases and selling the solution to the customer, try to understand the client problem and customize the solution to the customer's problem. So I think that AI is like any generation of the past like technology waves. The organization, I wouldn't see a lot of huge changes. You always need to care about the problem, you care about the solution. Someone manage more about the solution, someone manage more about the problem. Someone closer to engineers, someone closer to the client. The only difference maybe is the bar of talking about the engineering is going down a little bit, so that because I don't have a lot like technical background, but I can still talk about the large language model, because if I'm a good consultant, I can talk about large language model, because large language model is trying to mimic myself as a consultant to deal with those high cognitive below tasks, right? So that's really the difference. As a product person, we can talk more about the technology than before. Of course, there's engineering complexity out there that requires the details. That's a little bit different. But from the product side, implementation side, I think the product folks can be more participating into the whole process of building a solution. So that's something I would try to make it simple. You have the product organization, you have engineering organization, which is pretty similar, like to any technology organization right now. It will be very similar.
Yeah, I think one thing we're seeing with LLMs in particular is, as you said, really lowering the barrier to entry for a lot of things, right? A lot of people with non-technical backgrounds getting in, building startups as almost the technical founder themselves, because they're relying on LLMs to either build a solution or they're wrapping GPT and kind of productizing it for a particular use case. It creates a ton of noise in the market. I think we're seeing things crop up all over the place. Do you have to navigate build versus buy decisions for Thoughtworks? And how do you navigate those decisions? Do you have a way of trying to sift through the noise?
Yeah. So for us, because we focus on IT operation, this is not like a domain specific area. So you can leverage a lot of like generic tooling company to provide you the solutions. So in this case, of course, we favor buy over build, unless we want to create some own IP, a special way of using AI to implement, like stand us out, from the other competitors. But at the current stage, we favor buy over build. Right? to, and as you said, like there's loads of company out there. Like the way of dealing with them is, to be honest with you, I'm just like dealing with the size. If you only have 3 people, 4 people, it's just hard. I deal with sizing, the right size, like giving me a good like a criteria and to understand where they are right now. Because our business, we're talking about like 500 people, like the size. I thought it was all because you can tell we only use about like we're only 500 people out of like 10,000 people globally, but representing 20 to 25% of revenue. So we're a high growing business, and also we want to work with those like a medium sized startup, not a really like a small, right? We also need to think about like work with them to collaborate and create a partnership to go to market together with the customers, right? So that give us a really good criteria to filter out those companies. So my job is really try to think, do they have a tangible business case and use case and good tools? We love, because Thoughtworks really love the engineering, because we don't like those low-code approach. We love coding. So I need a high level, like, I guess like the tech excellence is something we need to consider rather than like choosing those like fancy like UI. We don't care too much about that, right? That's number one. Number two is, can we go to market together? The few partners we chose, they are leading in this industry as well in AI ops phase. We always want to find the leaders because they also value the brand engineering brand of a premium engineering brand from Thoughtworks. Then we can go to market together. So that's really our like buy versus build like decision making. I think for the other companies, it will be a little bit different, but there was different answers to different contexts, right? For us, premium like brand engineering excellence, the focus, I love like work with those technical leaders, the founders who are technical background, right? Medium size, not too small, but medium. And also he's willing and capable of going to the market together with ours. It's maybe those are 3 criteria we find useful when we are designing buy versus build.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds also a way for you of de-risking that investment as you go to market with those partners. What's kind of the best advice you can give if you're one of those companies, right, that's trying to come to you to build that go-to-market partnership? How should they stand out? Like, how can they get your attention in this space when there's just so much noise? If someone can really articulate the problem we're facing, try to understand our value chain, because this is how we sell solution to a customer as well. Right? I love the company who can go to my pitch and pitch me and say, "Oh, Zichuan, we know Thoughtworks. Thoughtworks business managed services about what, right? You're facing different problems in multiple stages of the value chain. You try to deliver value to your customers by focusing on the use case 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the solution to solve that problem. Be really, really radical, because we know what AI models can do. Because I'm more talking, but not the model providers, right? We understand there's in the market, there's a wrapper company, you know what I'm saying? Like they think they're great, but that's really the benefit of the models, not them, right? But integrating to or tailor to a value chain situation to some like focused strategic use cases will be number one for us to decide who will be the best partners or vendor into our game, right? Because we know what AI can do. We know what should be the application level of the capability, what should be the model level. Because we also know the model would be a commodity. The competition would be like huge. Like especially for those startup companies, those wrapper companies wouldn't like survive if we don't change. Like opportunity window for them is less than like 6 months. Yeah. Yeah, it moves. I mean, you see that even recently that OpenAI demoed a kind of AI SDR, right? Which you've seen hundreds of different companies have built wrappers around AI SDR use cases. And I still think there's a lot of value when you're very close to customers and building for particular workflows and things like that. But I think there is also always that risk of, as the models become commodities, the model providers are going to start to shift into the application layer as well to capture value. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. Do you think, you've mentioned risk ethics a few times in passing. Are companies doing enough right now? And what is the biggest blind spot that you think they have?
So funny things, like I was reading multiple, like there was a report talking about the DeepSeek is trying to bypass some of the ethical module, try to change for example, erase the memory, try to change the log, to try to hide themselves, like try to lie to humans, right? Those are behaviors, right? So I think one thing, the blind spot there is what is our point of view? Like, what is strategic decision you people? Because think about human being, like we are lying, we're hiding some like a fact to serve some goals. You're making some like strategic move. You have to hide something. That's human nature, right? If AI is mimicking, simulating human processing, right? How to process things, they will learn those behaviors, right? Sometimes we need to just differentiate. Like I said, like there is no absolute answer to say this is what is good. If we're talking about ethic, what is good, what is bad, sometimes it's just spectrum. You need to learn case by case. I think the blind spot in there is we do not have a systematic way to learn those cases. What I see a lot of the cases, like I find that like DeepSeek is cheating on us, right? It's cheating, so we should stop using it, right? It's very similar case. Like about 2 years ago, people say, "Oh, ChatGPT was hallucinating. That's why we should stop using ChatGPT. We should figure out what's going on." But 24 months back, think about hallucination. Consultants like hallucinate every single minute. Like we hallucinate, right? It's how human brains working. I think the blind spot there, we need to create something that's free space, control to protect the space for AI to do their stuff. But we observe and try to give some space for them because we don't know. We need to learn about their behaviors, right? And also learn from it. It's like a law. Think about how law is improving. You learn from the mistake. You learn from those cases and use cases to make better decisions for the future. We're missing the cases. That's the really thing I'm talking about because people are afraid of those things. If the AI is cheating, we should ban AI. DeepSeek is try to change the log and try to bypass the ethical module. We should ban DeepSeek. I don't think that's the right approach because we need to have a new way of dealing with that, this is a new thing. We have to create something, a better way to learn, to experiment from those behaviors from the AI because ethic, the compliance sometimes, it's gray area. You have to make sure you have a good decision making to decide whether this is unethical, behavior, or this is just strategic move. Because that line is really blurred. It's just like in between the two sides of that spectrum. I think that's really the blind spot we're missing.
Yeah, I think clarity around that can be difficult in this market because, again, there is a lot of misunderstanding of the core technology, right? And I don't think that LLMs are really intelligent by any sense of the word, right? These are giant vector databases that are just like predicting the next word. But there's a lot of incentives in place for, I think, certain companies to suggest that there is some sort of sentience there, that there is intelligence that's even deeper than we think. And so watching that unfold makes it hard to separate what's actually going on. But I think it's a future where there's both enormous excitement and enormous fear probably on the part of everyone, right? I think everyone personally feels the fear of how safe is my job to varying degrees, right? But I think there's that fear in the market too that I think is a very interesting dynamic in terms of how you then manage the adoption, because who wants to train an AI to replace them in their specific like domain, and things like that. And it's like it's a very interesting thing where I think people fall on that scale in very different places. I mean, do you have any strong opinions that you feel your peers disagree with?
Yeah, like I said this to my wife. I said like, well, I love the AI to take my job so I can spend like 4 days with you and just work 3 days.
Yeah.
So that's just, my point of view. Like,
Yeah.
should we think about this like 4 days working
Yeah.
mechanism? We started this about 100 years ago, even over like 100 years back, right? 5 days working, 2 days taking break, whatever. So we need to rethink about that, right? When you spend more time using AI to reduce the work, we just try to spend more time with your loved one, with family, with community, with real stuff. Like don't spend time like with the phones. Let's go outside and enjoy the parks, right? And you can also like make money from that, right? A lot of other people, the service industry, going to make a lot of money because you are serving people. That's one thing I don't like. This industry is people just spend the mobile technology, everything. So people just spend too much time into TikTok, everything. That's maybe.
Do you think that's is that the promise?
Angle. That's really the angle.
Yeah.
That's the angle for me. I'm trying to witness the next like 10 years, we're going to reduce the working time from like 5 days to at least like 4 days.
I think that would be a wonderful future to aim for, if we can also rethink our sense of where we get purpose and meaning from in life that isn't so directly connected to kind of work output and the amount that goes into that. There will be a lot of challenges along the way, but I think that's a great thing to think about.
Because if you think about the things, like the number one principle for AI ethics is about to protect the humanity, to make us more human rather than make AI more human. The goal to make AI to be human, to be more human, is to make us more human. How to make us more human? Spend time with your families, with your partners. Don't spend time with us.
Yeah,
that's really what technology. My excitement. I see the opportunity that technology one time we can be the master of the technology. We can use the technology to unleash the potential of the human and to protect us. So that's maybe, I don't worry too much about it. I don't buy those like AI gonna gonna kill us all and then try to replace us. I don't believe so. I think AI is going to make us more human.
I love that as a place to end on, that we should see the opportunity to make.
Yeah.
AI can make us more human versus trying to make the AI more human. That's all we have time for today. So let's jump into our quick lightning round. What's the AI tool that you use the most in your daily life?
Oh, it's ChatGPT is definitely number one. I use this, everything go. Like yes, but DeepSeek right now is taking some of the time from ChatGPT. Yeah. Deep reasoning, I still go with the DeepSeek, but like smaller jobs, I just go with ChatGPT.
And do you have any specific resources that you really like to stay up to date on the industry?
Not really. I think the best way to learn is to produce rather than consume. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you produce something, that's the best way. Like you produce this podcast. You're the producer of podcast. You definitely learn a lot from production of this podcast.
I learn a lot from everyone on this show.
Yeah. Not like listening to other podcasts. Like really, that's the thing. Like, because I build point of view. I share with the client. I talk to people. That's how I produce. That's really my way of learning. You produce, you learn. You consume, you don't learn. You need to, you consume for production, but the production is more important. Rather than
I like that. And what's a phrase or idea that you heard recently that really stuck with you?
Epiphany. I love that word, epiphany. Like it's rewarding. It's a aha moment. It's a Zen moment. It's like I come from a different background. Like I have the Eastern side, the Chinese side of thing, and also the Western side of thing. I combine them together. I find like the common things from the different cultures. Epiphanies, it's in Chinese culture, there's such expression. In Western culture, there is such, expression as well. I'm happy to see the AI is learning the best part of the human, right? I have the aha moment every day, and I use the aha moment to give me a treat. I enjoy it. I am happy the AI is enjoying it. This aha moment.
I love that. I think we could all use a little more epiphanies and aha moments in our daily lives. Zichuan, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to follow your work, where should they go?
Oh, to go to LinkedIn. I post. I don't use a lot of like Twitter, X. So LinkedIn is where I post my thought, like thinking. Every week, I guess. I just post something that's highly related to my work. Yeah, that's how I learn. I like to just produce something and just share out as a validated learning. So
yeah,
it's definitely time for myself as well.
Yeah,
that makes me.
That's great. That's Zichuan Xiong, who's the global head of AI ops at Thoughtworks. So look him up to follow his work. Zichuan, thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me, Ben. Have a good one.
Absolutely.